Hello, family, friends, and fellow sojourners. I have a special guest that is going to tell a story today that was very meaningful to her, and I hope that you feel the same in God's miraculous ways. Her name is Renelle. She is one of my youngest cousins. As a matter of fact, when I was a teenager, um, I changed her diapers and took care of her. She and her brother were very, very sweet and special back in the day, and they're still special today. Um, so Renelle, whenever you're ready, and I'll ask questions if I think you're missing something.
Okay.
So just go ahead.
What I'd like to talk about is my mom. My mom was extremely special to me. We did a lot together. We just played games together. We just done a lot. And so in 2011, that was just not an interesting year, not a good year at all by any means. There's several stories in that year, but in 2011, my mom started having some issues. She had got over thyroid cancer and she was cleared of that, and she was seeing what's it called? An aurora. What's it?
An aura.
An aura, yeah. Thank you. She kind of started seeing that. She had been in the hospital several different times. I'd been down there playing games with her when she was in the hospital, and she started having seizures, and she could feel them coming on. And so we kind of went through several months of this going on. She was also on July 1st, she turned 65, and we had a big surprise birthday party for her down in Ouray. And that was really, really good. Shortly after that, things kind of really started going bad. On September 11th, she was non-responsive. My dad went to wake her up, and she wouldn't wake up. And they lived in Farmington, New Mexico, and my brother, sister, and I lived in Grand Junction,
Colorado.
Yeah, and so my dad called the ambulance, and they got her in. Us kids all found out about it. We got a phone call, and we all met in Grand Junction to ride down, not in the same vehicles, but to stay together on our way down there, because we knew that my dad wouldn't call us and let us know if something bad happened, if my mom had passed away. But in the event that a family member called to say they was sorry or whatever, we wanted to be together in case we got that news. So we got to the hospital. They knew something was on her brain from the seizures and stuff like that. They had done tests, MRI or whatever it was.
CAT scans or whatever.
Yeah, and so they knew something was on her brain, but they did not know what it was, and they didn't want to go in and start messing around because, you do that and you could paralyze, somebody. You can do a lot of things. So they didn't know that. So when she had a brain bleed, and so while they was in relieving the pressure on her brain, they took a biopsy. So they had sent that in. So we got to the hospital. We went in and seen her. She was not awake at the time or anything. So
Comatose? Was she in a coma?
I don't think it was a coma. I don't think she was in a coma at that time. I don't believe that. Hindsight, my brother and sister had to come back. My sister had several kids. She brought her youngest one with her, but she had to get back. She had kids to get home to. My brother had to get back to get to work, so I stayed with my dad. Through a lot of this stuff that was going on and everything, they got the results back of this, but they didn't want to tell us what it was, because it came back as glioblastoma, which is a worse case of brain cancer. So they sent it off to another clinic to have it tested, to double check it, to make sure before they told us. So we found out that's what it was. We was told by I think it was like a physician assistant or something, that I am assuming by the way that he told us that he thought we already knew what it was. So in a not a really nice way, he just informed us that with radiation and chemo, we could extend her life from 2 months to 4 months, which was just a devastating shock. I mean, I was in Farmington with my dad. I had to leave the room. I left the room, went and found a corner, and I'm going to cry. I went and found a corner to be able to call my husband, to tell my husband, because I was in shock, because she was, every time they'd get her up, by this time she was awake, but every time they'd get her up, she was walking and she was doing stuff, and she kept saying she was going to fight it. So that was a shock. So anyway, we ended up taking her, we moved her up to Grand Junction to get her to go through the surgeries and stuff like that and start radiation and chemo, and we was going to try to fight this. Through several things, she ended up going into a coma. They did a surgery. it just wasn't going well. The doctor kept telling us to be patient, that she had been through a lot. Like I said, my brother walked in and she was laying flat on her back, and he was just watching her, and then all of a sudden she started throwing up. Had he not been there, she would have aspirated. She had went into a coma. It just wasn't good. It was just not going good. So the doctor finally called us all in, all four of us, and said, you know, we had to decide if it was quality of life or quantity of life. And so we was actually in the process of doing a fundraiser, because we thought, you know, maybe we could take her someplace to get help. But then all this other stuff started happening. So we decided that we was going to allow family and grandkids and all that to come in and say bye. So I was planning on just letting her go whenever it came up the next time. I had prayed to God. I had to go home. My brother stayed with my dad at the hospital, and I went home, and all the way home I prayed that, you know, if it was my will, if it was God's will for me to be there, that I would be there. And at 1 o'clock that morning, I got a phone call from my brother saying we was losing her, and I was about an hour away. So my husband and my son and I all drove down to the hospital, and by the time we got there, she was gone. Now we're in the process of having to plan a funeral. We still followed through with the fundraiser to pay for the funeral expenses. I'm a fast talker, sorry. To pay for the funeral expenses, and it went well. I mean, my husband, where he was working at the time, which is still where he's working, they just got bought out. They had told him that they would match whatever the fundraiser was. And we raised about $4,000 through the fundraiser, and his job matched that, and that was almost to the penny. I don't have exact number, but it was almost to the penny of what the funeral cost. And so that was a blessing, because we just put it on our credit card. I had an $8,000 funeral expense on my credit card that you know, at the time, you just have to do what you have to do. So we done that, and it was a real blessing to see how God worked through a very hard time, and to see that He was there, that He never leaves us. You know, He's seen our tears, He knew our heart, and He knew that we had a big bill there. I mean, there's no other way to explain it except for to know that God was there and that He was taking care of us through this hard time. And so that was a big blessing. You know, you never get over that stuff. You learn to accept it for what it is. Through all that, though, I never questioned where God was. I never questioned God through any of it. But what it did do is it allowed me to, or it got me in God's Word more. It's changed my life, because I realized that we are not guaranteed tomorrow. My mom wasn't healthy, but she wasn't in bad shape. She had thyroid cancer. She was a diabetic. But overall, she was in good shape. I mean, she would put any of us, I mean, we're all tired and worn out and stuff, and she's still working in her garden. It really, whether it was cousins or her brother-in-laws, you know, her kids, her friends and stuff like that, we was all in shock because of it. But I have grown to just trust in God. It's drawn me closer to God. It showed me that God is in control no matter what, whether it was the funeral expenses or, I don't know, it really
Strengthened your
faith. It really brought me closer to the Lord. And that was through His Word. It took time. You know, sometimes you don't have words. You don't want to. There's times when I open up God's Word and I just want nothing. I don't want to think about anything. But I would spend lots of time reading, lots of time in His Word. And I found His comfort. I found His peace. I found His strength. His provision through all this. So I just hope that this maybe doesn't find you in a situation like that, but if it does find you in a situation, regardless if it's like my story, we all have our own stories. That was my story. That was a really, really hard year, and like I said, there's another part to that year that's
she'll be telling you about that probably the next vlog. So.
Yeah. So
Renelle, thank you so much for telling your story. I know personally how much you've changed. Your Christian faith is so much stronger than it was. So I believe that God allows us to go through these trials to strengthen our faith and rely on Him.
He absolutely does.
So anyway,
Yeah.
I love you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching the video. And if you're not a subscriber, please subscribe and give us some kind of comment about this if it's blessed you.
Yeah.
So anyway, we are definitely praising the Lord
Yep.
during this situation. So take care. God bless you. Bye-bye.